We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. I'm your host, Mark Angelides. On today's special edition, we are talking the two-term curse of presidents, why all eyes are on the 2026 midterm, with Donald Trump heading back towards the White House. The big question is, can he avoid the two-term curse? Well, that's the question. What is it? What does it mean? And can he, of course, as I've just iterated, avoid it? We're very fortunate to have with us Liberty Nation's senior political analyst and long-term host of this here radio show, perennial guest, Tim Donner. Thanks for being here, Tim.
Always a pleasure, Mark.
I'm really glad to have you, especially, in the wake of the election, analysis has become both a science and an art, and I think you offer the best of both in that. So let's get straight to the topic at hand, Tim. When presidents have two terms, they tend to spend the second term either as a king of foreign policy or a lame duck.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take?
Well, if you look at the second terms of the six presidents who've served 8 years since the passage of the 22nd Amendment in 1951, and I'll come back to the six presidents, but the 22nd Amendment was passed because even Democrats at that point felt that FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, getting elected 4 times would suggest that someone could think himself more a king or a dictator than a president. So it was a very popular move to limit the term of any single president to 8 years or 2 terms. And it's a good law according to the great mass of the American people, but it hasn't served two-term presidents very well politically. The 6 two-term presidents we've had since the passage of that 22nd Amendment have all stumbled or sort of been frozen in place in the second term. Now, the 6 of them are Dwight Eisenhower, who spent most of his second term just playing golf. Richard Nixon, who famously was forced to resign because of the Watergate scandal. Ronald Reagan got hit with Iran-Contra. Bill Clinton had his famous Monica Lewinsky sex scandal. George W. Bush became almost irrelevant, and his approval numbers plunged into the upper 20s by the time he left. And Barack Obama famously was limited to his pen and his phone. This is the usual fate of second-term presidents. But like everything else about him, Donald Trump is in a unique position with a second term. The only president other than Grover Cleveland who would serve 2 non-consecutive terms as president. So the fact that he's had 4 years to ponder how he would do things differently than his tumultuous first term has given him a strength that he certainly would not have had and an agenda and a series of appointments faster than I think any president. He filled out his cabinet, has made 42 appointments to cabinet positions and executive agencies. It's put him in a unique position to act more like a first-term president. But beyond that, his second term is it's unique because it's going to be far more effective than his first term when he was a novice. He had no real alliances in Washington. This time around, he's had plenty of time to figure out exactly what he wants to do and who he wants at his side as he's doing it.
I think part of Trump avoiding that second term curse is that when a president is elected to a second term, it's often seen as a continuity. And it's, well, we can stick with what we know. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't. And
Yes.
So people are very comfortable voting for it. They don't expect anything different. But there's that unique insight that we've had, which is, here's what happens when you don't have Donald Trump. Now, in fairness to Joe Biden, there was, and the same for Donald Trump, which probably cost him the election, there was a pandemic to come out of. But then America had a glimpse of what a presidency without Donald Trump would look like. And we were told that the adults are back in charge. And they've seen and I'm sure this is a familiar phrase in America as well. It seems to have gone to hell in a handbasket. under Joe Biden's leadership. And you have, well, for example, the latest news is out in Ukraine. They're thinking about the Biden administration, members of it, are thinking about sending nuclear weapons back to Ukraine to be based in Ukraine. They've allowed the attacker missiles to be fired, American-made attacker missiles to be fired into Russian territory. They've authorized landmine usage. I mean, since I was a child, we've heard about the terror of landmines and how these are a destructive force that last multiple generations. And yet, in the waning days of the Biden administration, you've got this chaos, and that's not to mention the economic chaos and the border chaos that we've had. And so the American public were granted a very, very unique insight into this is the alternative. So when they voted for Donald Trump, which they did so by even more than they did in 2020, and even more than they did in 2016. And so they had this window and they saw it. And it seems that the American public decided that I think we need more of Donald Trump. They collectively decided that because they witnessed the alternative, which they never had an opportunity to do so before, except for Grover Cleveland, as you point out.
Well, this is a rare opportunity for the American people, where it was, to put two administrations side by side, because both candidates, Biden, then Harris, and Trump, had records that they had to either run on or defend. And it was pretty clear who people preferred, because it's not like people suddenly took to Trump's personality, that the people who found him personally offensive suddenly said maybe he's not so much that way. It was all a matter of the record. And in a way, the grown-ups were the voters who said, yeah, we may not like him personally, but we're not electing him to come over to dinner. We're not electing him to take care of our kids. We're not electing him to be a pastor. We're electing him to be a president. So we had a rare opportunity there to have a side-by-side comparison of two administrations that actually occurred. No longer is Donald Trump I'm going to do this. I'm going to try that. Here's what I think I will do. This is, I've done it for 4 years. And the contrast was very sharp. You know, most second-term presidents, the reason that they can't get much done and wind up disappointed is because the moment they're reelected, they become a lame duck, right? All of a sudden, their power is not nearly what it was in those heady first 100 days of their initial presidency, initial administration. That's why the first 100 days in 2 years of any administration are most critical. But again, like everything else, Donald Trump is unique in the sense that he's much better positioned to actually accomplish the things that he would have liked to in his first administration. He tried to drain the swamp from 2017 to 21. This time, he knows how to empty the swamp.
Yes, you mentioned earlier that he's pretty much running at breakneck speed to bring in his cabinet appointments, and with the stepping down of from consideration of Matt Gaetz of Florida, it does seem that although there's still, of course, the stories and the innuendos about cabinet picks, I'm thinking Tulsi Gabbard and people saying that she's a Russian asset, which, you know, obviously they weren't saying when she was a loyal Democrat. Which,
funny about that.
Funny, strange, I thought. Funny.
As the coincidence.
Coincidence only.
Coincidence.
It's Russiagate 2.0, right? And so you have...
Essentially, yes.
Yeah. And so you have him choosing all these people, and he knows now that because he's gone for really loyalty over anything else. And I think that's what really let him down in the first term, because it was a ship that was full of leaks, it was acrimony, and it was talking from two sides of the mouth. So whatever was happening within the White House, and then there was all the talk about he's throwing ketchup against the walls and things. which obviously completely unfounded in anything. May have been true, but it wasn't any proof about these things. But they're talking about the discord, and I think that talk of the discord created discord. And this time he's gone for loyalists. Now, all this leads to one thing, and that is that Donald Trump pretty much has to get his agenda set and in place and proving its worth by 2026. And there's a deadline for a reason. We're going to talk about that after this short break. Don't go anywhere.
We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.